Even if somebody finds it, I'll claim that it's not mine. I could always think up I could always think up of a suitable excuse for my enormous experience. Where'd we leave off? We just got the yeast from the infirmary. Gotta go to the clubhouse. It feels like I've gone through more things today than all the previous days combined. Thus, approaching the clubhouse, I'd even forgotten to think about how awkward it must be to look for sugar there. Sharik and Electronic were enthusiastically building something. They were so busy that they didn't even notice me. I looked closely. It was some kind of robot, or at least the body of one. Moreover, this robot was female and had animal ears. I didn't want to make up theories about the purpose of such a device for luminaries of camp cybernetics. Even though the design looked practically workable, I had my doubts about this robot ever being able to conquer Earth, or at least being able to do anything on its own. But they seemed to be enjoying the process more than the end result itself. And that was something we shared, even though I didn't want to admit it. On the other hand, they weren't afraid of the possibility of failure, criticism, or jokes. They were working towards the goal without paying attention to others, who would call it unrealistic or even absurd. Oh, looks like I'm truly comparing them to the luminaries of science. Hey guys, I greeted them uncertainly. Oh, Semyon, come in. We're always glad to see you. I was actually already inside. You know, sorry for what happened yesterday. I barely remember anything, but, well, never mind. It's okay. And what brings you to our humble abode? Electronic looked at me slyly. Sometimes I feel that he makes such a face when he knows something about the other person, something he can use in a right moment. Sugar. I need sugar. An image from an ancient video game suddenly came into my mind, where some kind of unit, like a builder or something, cried out with all of its 5 pixel stature. Gold! We need more gold! We got it, said Electronic calmly. Why would you want it? I felt that I shouldn't explain to Sharik that they want to bake a cake for him. I shouldn't spoil the surprise. I don't know. Olga Dmitrovina told me to get some. Okay, hang on. Electronic disappeared behind the door into the next room. And why do you have sugar here? Why not in the canteen? When the food truck came last time, it was the last thing to unload. And given that our building is the closest to the entrance, they decided to leave it here to save some effort. That's reasonable, isn't it? The door opened, revealing Electronic hauling a huge bag behind him. I really don't know what the size of the cake will be, but that was obviously too much sugar. Well, thanks, but I don't need it all. But where would we put it? Electronic gave me a surprised look. Electronic, we don't have a place for it. You asked for sugar, so take it. It seemed it seems that the previous smile of his wasn't there without a reason. Maybe you'll help me then? It's not that far to carry. We're busy. He pointed his hand at the robot. I gazed at Sharik. He owed me after all. He hesitated and then looked away in shame. I sighed, took the bag, and headed to the door. Thanks anyway. I said at parting, exerting myself. But I didn't make it too far. Just after a mere 20 meters, I had to put the bag down to have a rest. I had no idea how much it weighed, but it felt like more than 20 kilos. On the one hand, it was just 200 meters to the canteen. On the other hand, even such a distance with this payload on my shoulder, or alternately in my hands, or on my legs, or under my arm, or even on my head, looked impossible for me to cover. And as I resigned myself to move in minor sprints with prolonged pauses between them, so I could get there by night at least, I heard a voice behind me. Maybe I could help you? I saw Lena in front of me. I don't think you can. It was one of those moments when I felt painfully how dramatically I was out of shape. I can bring a handcart. A handcart. Why didn't I think of that myself? Yes, that'd be great. Wait here. I'll be right back. She smiled and ran in the direction of the square. What would I do without her? It's good that Lena isn't always that shy and can take the initiative sometimes. I started to think. She seemed quite unusual now, with no trace of shyness on her face, and actually the complete opposite, smiles and confidence. The offer of help wasn't something extraordinary by itself, but getting it from Lena. A few minutes later, she came back with a smallish handcart. I put the bag down on it. Thanks. Don't mention it. She blushed and looked down. Oh, the Lena we all know is back. So I'll go then. Yes, see you. And thank you again, I shouted after her. Sometimes I felt like there are two different people living inside of Lena. But the second one, confident, happy, and sometimes even bold, only appears when she talks to me. Or am I making things up again? I thought that it would be better if I get all the ingredients at once, so I headed to Olga Dmitryevna's cabin with the handcart. If every other place on the ingredient list made at least some sense to me, then flour from the library made none. I thought hard about who would put it in the library and why, but I couldn't find any sane explanation after all. Given Xenia's harsh nature, I'd better knock first. Open. Xenia peered at me closely from behind her glasses. What do you want? Don't think anything weird, but I didn't want to look like an idiot and decided to explain things carefully. I need some flour. Olga Dmitrievna said that it's in here. I understand that it sounds strange to keep the flour in the library, but I was sent to you, and it's needed for a cake to celebrate Sharik's rescue. Yes, I have the flour. What's so strange about it? Xenia replied with surprise. At that second, I felt like I'd been hit on the head with a heavy weight and lost the ability to understand anything at all. Flour in the library. Sure, what's so strange about it? We're in Wonderland. I'm Alice. Now I'm gonna eat that magic mushroom and I'll be back home. Hey. Yeah? I was daydreaming. Wait here. I'll be right back. She disappeared behind the bookshelves while I folded my hands and started waiting. A moment later, the sound of a trapdoor groaning on its hinges reached me. Hey, you need some help? I inquired loudly. I'll deal with it, Xenia barked out at me. She seems to be in the basement, so I'll have to wait a little. Okie dokie. A few minutes passed, but Xenia still hadn't returned. I was starting to get worried when the door was suddenly flung open and Elisa came into the library. She looked surprised, too, seeing me here. What are you doing here? Am I not allowed to be here? I said rudely to her. Elisa was clearly a bit overwhelmed. What do I care? She snorted and headed to Xenia's table. And why are you here then? Elisa measured me with her eyes carefully and almost opened the mouth to say something, but then seemed to change her mind and turned away, hiding her hands behind her back. Returning a book? I blurted the first thing off the top of my head. It's none of your business, she replied with a hint of hesitation. What book is it? Elisa was silent. Oh, come on. Let me see it. I wonder what Miss High Voltage Keep Away reads. It's none of your business. Her voice was even less confident. Okay. I don't insist or anything. In fact, I was quite interested to find out what Elisa was reading. Moreover, I was quite amused to see a book in her hands. TV, movies, or a computer, if one were available here, all these things seemed to be much more appropriate entertainment for a girl like her. But she had a book instead. My curiosity won. I struck at the right moment when Elisa was looking away from me and snatched the book. Ouch! She screamed. In the following second, her face took on such an expression that it made me question my decision. If I'm about to die, at least I will know what for. I held a copy of Gone with the Wind in my hands. That was the same book Lena was reading that evening on the bench. I was so astonished that I completely forgot about my imminent death. Is it interesting? Yeah, Elisa answered without any enthusiasm, blushing. Okay, then. I handed the book back to her. Elisa threw it on the table and left the library quickly without looking at me. So, human things aren't alien to her. In the end, she too is a girl. After a quick review of everything that just happened, I concluded that there was actually nothing that strange. Finally, Xenia's deep groan rang out, reaching each and every corner of the library. Grab it! I passed the bookshelves and beheld the perspiring librarian sitting near the trapdoor leading into the basement with a small sack next to her. Well, they might have some sort of storehouse down there. Thanks! I took the sack and left the library. Thank goodness it wasn't too heavy, so I carried it down to Olga Dmitryevna's cabin without too much effort. Finally, it seems that everything had been collected. I took the handcart with sugar outside and put the sack with flour in it, followed by the 2 baskets of strawberries that somehow fitted in between, and the beer was hidden under my shirt, just in case. The day was coming to an end, so I had to hurry, as cake itself will need some time to bake. Of course, I'd rather enjoy lying down, closing my eyes, and getting decent sleep, but I just couldn't let Olga Dmitrievna down. Indeed, after all the trouble I'd gone to, I even felt personally responsible for the success of this event. Coming to the square, I stopped for a moment to catch my breath. It wasn't that the cart was heavy. It ran smoothly, without any noticeable effort required. It was just that the physical exertion caused pain to me now. Both a physical and mental one. I sat down on the bench and closed my eyes for a moment. What's that? I didn't really give a damn who it was. Probably just a fellow pioneer girl taking an interest in an unfamiliar companion in distress. What are you talking about? I asked her tiredly. She didn't reply. Those are the ingredients for a cake. Do you like cakes? I don't know. What? You've never tried a cake? I don't know. Obviously, the girl didn't get what I was talking about, but it didn't surprise me at that moment. I really wasn't interested in the conversation. I was so tired that I had zero intention of classifying external distractions and tagging them as either common or uncommon. I see. Come down to the canteen later and have a bite. Really? Really. And what are they made of? What? I asked indifferently. These. Cakes. Well, some flour, some sugar, various fillings. Now that's a strange question. Doesn't she know what cakes are made of? And you have it all here? Yeah, sort of. And sugar? And sugar. Could you lend me a little? What for? I thought it was over the top. A sudden gust of wind made me grab the cart instinctively and open my eyes. However, nobody was there. Am I daydreaming? I noticed, though, that the sugar sack was untied and a small heap of it had been poured out. Could it be that she was scared by the wind and ran away? Having fixed the sack, I got up from the bench and continued on my challenging strawberry way. There wasn't a single person near the canteen. No wonder. Dinner was still an hour away. I brought the handcart to the rear exit and handed the foodstuffs to the camp cook. She must have already been told what to do with them, as she gave me such an unpleasant look. I'm not sure how long it takes to bake a cake, but it seems she had to hurry. I just wanted to relax for the remaining time and up until dinner. In short, I was so tired that I just sat on the steps and waited. My eyes closed themselves. I guess I got so tired throughout the day that I didn't even notice how someone came up to me until they patted me on the shoulder. Hi! Miku was standing before me. Yeah? I didn't need a mirror to imagine the expression of skepticism and annoyance on my face. Oh, excuse me, I must have interrupted you. No problem. I was just sitting here. Ah, alright then. Miku beamed with a smile. I was just coming to dinner. I thought that it's time already, and then it appeared to me that it's too early, but I decided to check in, just in case. Maybe it's not me who's mistaken, but the clock is? Well, not the clock. Clocks can't be mistaken. It's just that I misread it. She seems to be ultimately confused now, and fell silent. It's still about half hour before dinner. Oh, that's great. Then I'll sit here and wait with you if you don't mind. Frankly speaking, I do mind. You know, I have some matters to attend to. I stood up quickly and left without saying goodbye, ignoring Miku as I always did, while she screamed something after me. A minute later I got to the square, and sat on the bench with the firm intention of finding a quiet and safe place here to wait for dinner. I think this is the first time in the last 4.5 days when I felt like this. I wasn't just irritated because of some insignificant details, but, indeed, I was really angry. I've completely stopped caring about where I am and why I'm here. I don't care about how to get out either. What's driving me mad is that I always have to carry out some stupid task given by our camp leader, and it's always me who gets into stupid situations and sometimes even ends up looking like a clown. If all of this is some alien trick or plot of the universal mind, they better consult with their psychiatrist. I gritted my teeth and clenched my fists. And most annoying thing is that everything that happens seems to happen by itself somehow. I'd be happier not having to carry around bags of sugar that weigh a ton, but I had no choice at all. I mean, any other option would lead to much worse consequences than a muscle strain or hurt pride. Who are you arguing with? Juliana was standing in front of me and smiled slyly. Nobody, really. I answered absently, but my fist gave me away. Just like that. Okay, it's up to you. You better tell me. Why did you run around the camp the whole day with some kind of bags? I had to. I've replied reluctantly. I guess it was food. Maybe it was. Juliana was about to say something, but that moment the bell rang, calling pioneers for dinner. I sighed in relief and quickly headed to the canteen, leaving Juliana behind. Semyon, thank you very much. For what? The camp leader gave me a friendly smile. For the cake, of course. Sure. It was at that exact moment that I understood the true meaning of the saying, keep your thanks to feed your cat. You didn't tell anybody. This ought to be a surprise. Yeah. That's my boy. And now, off you go to dinner. Olga Dmitrovna waved her hand, pointing at the canteen. I stepped through the doorway and started to look for a free place. Turned out that there were plenty today, so I got a chance to eat all alone. There was fish with mashed potatoes for dinner. What misfortune again. I'll be left half hungry. And didn't we have fish for lunch? Is it a fish only day today? Having pushed my plate with the fried sea dweller away, I laid my head on my hands and closed my eyes. But soon somebody came up to the table. Hey, are you alright? I'm fine, I replied without changing my position. Just tired? Yeah, a little. That's bad. Slavia said it seriously. Of course. You remember that we are going for the hike after dinner, don't you? Have you prepared everything? What? Where? I opened my eyes and lifted my head up instantly. Lena was standing by Slavia. The hike? She was surprised. Didn't you know? No. I put my head down on the table and covered it with my hands. If only I could sink into the ground right away. The girls remained silent. I was left alone with my thoughts for some time, and that was fine by me. Maybe I could have sat that way until the end of dinner time, but the strong voice of Olga Dmitrovna was heard from the opposite end of the canteen. Guys, to celebrate the miraculous rescue of our friend and comrade Sharik, we baked this cake for you all. I lifted my head idly and looked towards the camp leader, but couldn't see anything beyond the pioneers' backs. A second, just a second. And nothing about me. Nothing about me rescuing Sharik or gathering the ingredients for the cake. As if that's how it ought to be. Well, it would be wrong for me to expect anything less from our camp leader. Waiting all day for this release. Oh, I see what you did there. Let's go. Or we won't get our share. Slavia smiled. Let's go. Lena agreed. Yeah, sure. I got up reluctantly and tagged along behind the girls. As we approached a crowd of pioneers, Olga Dmitrovna was putting the cake in the center of the table. And now, the camp leader wasn't able to finish as Uliana rushed out from the pioneer crowd and dived into the cake. She managed to nibble it a few times before she was pulled away. She was kicking and screaming. I stared blankly from the outside at all this drama. Elisa smiling, Lena picking up some cream with her finger, all the furious pioneers around. I felt completely out of place here. I thought that if I closed my eyes now and opened them again, here I am, back to the safety of my apartment in front of a computer. I blinked, but nothing changed. Only the noise and the confusion became sharper. Uliana, that's the limit! I just... Well, in fact, behaving like this is a bit over the top, even for her. Sharik broke into the conversation, or is it a court-martial? Please, Olga Dmitrovna, since the cake is celebrating my return, it's no big deal. He hesitated. It doesn't matter. The camp leader turned to Uliana. And you. Today I'm going to punish you to the fullest extent, so you'll behave next time. Whatever. She snorted and turned back. You won't be going on the hike with us tonight. As if I wanted to. I was more than willing to switch places with Uliana and skip the hike instead of her, but who knew? If I had have guessed beforehand, I'd have been the first one to go berserk and smash the damn cake. After a couple of minutes, the pioneers started to disperse. You have to get ready too. There'll be a lineup at the square in half an hour. I looked straight into the eyes of the camp leader, trying to express my attitude non-verbally, but it seems that I failed. Don't be late. Uliana was sitting at the table when I approached her on my way to the exit. So, why'd you do it? She looked very upset, but she had a right to be so. I wanted to, Uliana replied abruptly. So, you're happy now? Of course I am. And you? Good luck with the hiking. She smiled mischievously, sprang up, and rushed out of the canteen. Well, a little bit of luck wouldn't hurt. Walk and you shall reach is exactly what this proverb that kept whirling in my head all the way down to the camp leader's cabin. Somehow, I just couldn't manage to argue, to pretend that I'm sick, or to just skip it without a reason. The events of this day taught me submissiveness, although sometimes whatever was happening made no sense to me. As I walked in, I had a thought. Well, in fact, how should I get ready? Clothes? I only have an overcoat and a pair of jeans. Anyway, I forgot to ask whether it's going to be an overnight hike or not. I couldn't think of anything better, so I grabbed the sweater that I had on me when I arrived at the camp. The night might be fairly chilly, and shuffled slowly off to the square. True Pee-wee. All the camp was already there, although it was about 10 minutes before the time Olga Dmitrievna had designated. I settled down near the edge and waited patiently. Night was falling. If viewed from outside, what a fairly comical picture we would make. A crowd of pioneers, lined up out of sheer habit, like they were awaiting a silent command from the Bronze Genda. And all this happening in the scarlet rays of the sunset. And there he is, waving his hand and screaming, "Attack!" as roaring soldiers with red neckerchiefs charged into the battle against some ghostly enemy. But Olga Dmitrievna showed up and started to talk instead of Genta. It seems everybody is here. Great! I was so tired that I couldn't even think about anything, so I ended up just listening to the camp leader. Now, today we'll go hiking. It is essential for every pioneer to be able to come and rescue his comrade, to offer a helping hand in the hour of need, saving them from a hopeless situation. We have to learn to do all these things together. A whisper that ran through the pioneer crowd suggested that most probably this truly epic expedition would end in a clearing at the forest, several hundred feet away from the square. Somehow, I thought so too. We'll walk in pairs. So, if you haven't chosen a partner for yourself yet, now's the right time to do so. Pioneers quickly caught on to the idea and started to match in pairs. It looked like I was the only one without a partner. Slavia was enthusiastically discussing something with Olga Dmitrievna. Lena was with Miku. Electronic was, of course, with Sharik. Well, might not be a bad idea to go alone after all. Semyon! The voice of the camp leader pulled me out of my thoughts. I went up to her reluctantly. I see that you haven't found a partner. Seems like it. Then you'll join Xenia. She's alone too. I was struck with that special kind of despair that only a true loner can experience. So, it appears that I'm left with the prickly librarian that I would risk spending a couple of hours with even if I was paid for it. Although, we both seem to be in the same boat now. I slowly approached Xenia. Well, I guess we'll be going together. She looked up at me. Don't you even think that I'm glad, said Xenia seriously. Why on earth should you feel glad? I asked naively. Never mind. It would be much better if you just shut up. Well, couldn't get any better than this. She turned her back on me and followed the other pioneers. I still haven't seen any special reason to walk in pairs. Anyway, we were walking on the well-trodden forest trails, and it would be quite difficult to get lost here even if I wanted to. Moreover, while we'd already been hiking for half an hour, We weren't rushing into the depths of the forest, trying to face all the dangers that could test our courage and harden our pioneer spirits, but instead we were just walking around in circles. However, if we take into account that Olga Dmitrovina was our chief, this hike could be compared to a hobbit's march from the Shire to the Mordor. Just as Xenia insisted, I was following her at a distance in silence. The librarian seemed to be perfectly okay with it. Hey, don't you know when we'll reach our destination? Our what? Um, the place where we'll settle down and set up camp? The whole point of this hike isn't to set up camp, but the hiking itself. You don't get it. Yeah, it seemed like I didn't understand a thing about hiking. I guess you're right, but still. I don't know, she replied sharply and quickened her pace. I caught up with her and asked, Listen, why are you always so. I was about to say mean, but stopped short. I haven't done anything bad to you, and I'm not going to. She glared at me in surprise. Always so. What? Well, unsociable. Kind of. Or is it something about me? Oh, cut that stupidity out already. As you wish. I decided to not start a conversation with her for the rest of the hike. At last, Olga Dmitrovina decided to end this Sisyphean toil. It's time to halt. The place chosen turned out to be a quite large glade with a few tree trunks laid half in a circle to make an impoverished arbor with the remains of a campfire in the middle. Obviously, such hikes are a tradition of this camp. I was sent to gather firewood together with the other boys. It didn't take long, because there were a lot of branches and logs of various sizes lying around. Eventually, Olga Dmitrovina lit the fire using some old newspapers. I was eager to know what was written there, but couldn't couldn't discern anything other than Soviet symbols. Pioneers took their places on the fallen log benches and started to talk about things. It seems that the final goal of this event had been achieved. The only things missing were a pot of fish soup, aluminum cups of vodka, and a guitar. But I wouldn't be surprised if all these would appear somehow. What are you thinking about? Slavia sat next to me. Oh, nothing special. Just enjoying the hike. I answered sarcastically. You don't look happy. Well, I'm not about to jump for joy. Sorry about that. Okay, I won't disturb you. She sat with me for a while, but after realizing that I wasn't in the mood of talking, she left me to enjoy my introspection all alone. And all I wished for was to lie down in bed and fall asleep as soon as possible. But I was being surrounded by smoke and useless chatter of pioneers around me instead. They were cheering and laughing and in general enjoying this warm summer evening. In the far side of the glade, I noticed that Lena was arguing with Elisa intensely. Intensely, and Lena seemed like complete opposites to me. Slavia had left to go somewhere after our conversation, it seems. Electronic and Sharik were trying furiously to prove something to Olga Dmitrovina. Looks like I'm the only one who doesn't belong here. Only Lena and Elisa stood out among all this splendor. Well, of course it was quite natural for Elisa to be arguing with someone like that. But hearing Lena talk in a raised voice, I came closer silently, trying to understand what was going on. No, you listen to me. Think whatever you want. I've said everything. It looked serious. I tried as hard as I could not to attract any attention and look like I'm standing there with no intention of listening in on them. There's nothing to think about. Everything's as clear as day. Don't try to wind me around your little finger like that. I know you too well. Why, of course. You know everything. Then why won't you tell him yourself? Lena was getting angry. That alone was really weird, even considering that I didn't know what they were arguing about. That's none of your business. Elisa snorted, turned around, and her eyes met mine. Second later, Lena gave me a look as well. The girl stood there in confusion for some time. You're... You're eavesdropping? Me? Oh, no, no, no. I was just, like, passing by. I put on the best smile I had, but it didn't seem to help much. By the way, today, he was peeping at me. Elisa gave me a malicious smile. Lena looked at me questioningly. First of all, why would she believe this devious fox's stories? I didn't peep. You know quite well that it was an accident. Uliana should be the one to blame. Sure it was. Tell that to the cops. Seems like my excuse was not working. Did you like my boobs? A shiver ran up my spine. Is that true? Lena looked at me imploringly. Well, you see, it was an accident. I didn't see anything there. You didn't? Well, I can show you again. Elisa cried in anger. I didn't know what to say. You see? I told you. No, no. Lena started to mumble and rushed away a moment later. Wait, what happened? I shouted after her. See what you did? That girl is upset now. She gave me a spiteful smile. First of all, it wasn't me who upset her. Second, I don't have any idea what you two were arguing about. I was running out of patience. Why should I tell you? It seems she thought that our talk was over and was about to leave. I grabbed her hand abruptly. Elisa glanced at me in fear, but didn't say anything. I was angry at that moment. Really angry. First, I was wildly enraged that Lena was upset because of me, even though I was actually kind of guilty. Second, I was enraged by Elisa's insolence. Third, I was so tired that I was about to lose my temper at the smallest thing. Happy now? Welcome back, HS. I hissed, pointing into the darkness where Lena had run off. You only seem to have the guts to bomb memorials and hurt innocent girls. She looked frightened, saddened, and confused at the same time. She herself could hurt anyone. You just don't know her. The only truth here is that I don't know her too well, but I'm absolutely positive that she wouldn't hurt anyone. That's your job. We stood in silence for some time. I held Elisa's hand and didn't know what to do next. The solution dawned upon me all itself. You have to go and apologize. Why the hell should I? Elisa tried to act as arrogant as always, but it wasn't going to work this time. 'Cause I said so. I refused to hear any objections and dragged her to the side of the bonfire. Olga Dmitrovna, I'm sorry. We have some urgent business to deal with, so we have to leave early. The guidance officer tried to object, but I didn't listen and headed after Lena, pulling Elisa along with me. After some time, I released her hand. Any objections? All the pride and arrogance had left Elisa's face long ago. If you want me to come with you, I will. But I have nothing to apologize for. I told her the truth. We'll see about that then. I cut her short. We had been walking in silence until we entered the camp. We came to the square and I asked Elisa, where do we go next? How should I know? And who said that they know Lena well? Was it me? Elisa hesitated. Well, she could be at the island. She often goes there when she wants to be alone. Excellent. We headed to the pier. Night came down upon the camp while I searched for paddles and pottered around with the ropes. One boat was actually missing. Okay, today is your lucky day. You get to do several killer exercises that will build up your biceps, triceps, and other arm muscles. I said sarcastically. Are you serious? Elisa cast a fearful glance at me. Well, perhaps that was a little too rough, even for her. Alright, I won't make you row. Of course. That hardly sounded confident. Swinging the paddles appeared to be much harder this time. Well, that's not surprising, considering that today I must have already filled my annual rowing quota. I stopped in the middle of the river to catch my breath. The camp was covered by night. A trivial and ordinary night. It was one of those nights when the dark sky, stars, and crescent moon don't make you feel anything special, and chirping crickets and twittering birds sound like they are doing a dull routine job, rather than performing an otherwise exciting nocturne. I was staring into the darkness, trying to make out the shadowy island. How did you get to know her? Elisa shivered a little. We grew up together. She answered slowly after some hesitation, and ended up at the same pioneer camp. What a fabulous coincidence. All these questions, mysteries, and fears that had been so well hidden so far suddenly spawned in my head. Damn, I could just throw her out of the boat and drown her right here and now. I can demand answers, although it could be dangerous unless I'm sure that I know what I'm doing. But still, I thought that this time I was playing with the white pieces so I could make the first move, and not just parry the blows of the opponent. So, what kind of camp is this? Elisa stared at me blankly. Where are we? Why am I here? She kept silent. Answer me, I shouted. Hey, what's wrong with you? If you want me to apologize to Lena, I will. That's when I realized how stupid I was acting, to say the least. She could simply be uninvolved in all that stuff. And what's more, one can't lie that convincingly. Elisa's fearful expression was yet another reason to believe her. Sorry. That was all I was able to say at the moment. Yet I wanted to keep my advantage. The last few meters were really tough. Exhausted, I got out of the boat and lay on the cold ground. Elisa stood nearby, staring at me. I thought she was about to goad me or utter some barbed witticism, but she remained silent, as I assumed she was still shocked or something. Even though it was rather dark here, it would be easier to hide in my old flat than on this tiny island. Furthermore, Lena must have heard us as we were crossing the river, so by now it's already too late to ask Elisa any more questions, even though I still had some. Listen. I looked at her, but saw nothing. It was a dark night, and I didn't have cat eyes. Well, when we find Lena, you're going to tell her you never wanted to hurt her feelings, and everything that happened in the morning was nothing but a misunderstanding, okay? My voice didn't sound as confident as it did a couple of minutes ago, but confident enough. Although Elisa said nothing, it was clear by the look on her face that she agreed. I stood up and went off to find Lena. Her boat was tied to a snag on the far side of the island. That's very clever of her. One wouldn't see the boat from afar, I mumbled. Well, that means she's somewhere in the trees. Let's find her. I headed into the grove, but Elisa stood still. What's up? I thought we'd discuss everything already. It's not that. It's just that it's dark in there. I had to strain my eyes to make out her face. The grove is smaller than my grandmother's daisy garden. What is there to be afraid of? Elisa didn't answer. If you want to know what I'm thinking, I would gladly just leave you here. I never know what trick you're up to. Well, she came very close to me. Let's go like this. She took my hand. I hadn't expected this outcome. My cheeks turned red and hot. My breath was taken away, and I could barely say anything. The whole situation didn't favor conversation, which was probably for the best, since I doubt I would be able to say anything smart. Slowly, we headed into the grove. In a couple of moments, I regained some control of myself. Come on, there's really nothing to be afraid of. We came here during the day, gathering some strawberries. No big deal, just a normal birch grove. It's really nice here during the day, I added after a short pause. Elisa didn't look at me. She was staring somewhere into the distance. Well, it's up to you after all. After a few moments later, she pointed somewhere in front of us. There she is. I peered into the darkness, but could barely see anything. When we came closer, we saw Lena sitting beside a tree. She was crying. Why have you come here? She asked tearfully. And you? She looked at Elisa but didn't finish the sentence. That moment, Elisa released my hand. Well, you see, I just wanted to apologize for being somewhat harsh and rude. Elisa interrupted me. Her voice had regained that usual arrogance of hers. Maybe it's because she didn't want to look weak in front of Lena. What a perfect apology. Not walking the walk, are you? How clever of you to insist that I'm doing a bad thing, and then to do that same thing yourself. Lena switched to shouting uncontrollably. You got it all wrong. I get what I've seen. You see, girls, you're arguing again, and I seem to be somehow involved in all that, but I don't understand a thing. Explain it to him, Lena said to Elisa with a grin. There's nothing to explain. Well, maybe you will let me have a try then? Whatever. She crossed her arms over her chest and turned away. Well then, Semyon. She blamed me for pursuing you. For a minute there was complete silence. Lena didn't look like explaining any further, and as for me, I stood still trying to assemble the scattered pieces of the puzzle into a whole. What do you mean? Exactly what I said. It's not like that. That's not what I meant, interrupted Elisa. Of course. You've always been like this. Lena burst into tears again. Wait, how come? So Lena likes me? And you? What about you? You're trying to convince me that it's all wrong while you're holding his hand. What, so Elisa likes me too? Oh, come on. Elisa actually liking someone? This can't be happening. It's just it was dark in here and... That's so much like you. Always so arrogant. Always trying to control others. But when it comes to yourself... Elisa didn't answer. I really felt like I had to say something to defuse the situation. Hey, wait. Perhaps we just got it all wrong. This has nothing to do with you. Elisa's voice was oddly distant. Judging by the conversation, this has everything to do with me. Yes, it does. Ask her what she thinks of you, and why she told me not to go after you. I don't think Lena was actually going after me. I'm telling you once again, We heard enough of your story already. Lena shot up and ran away into the darkness. I stood nailed to the spot, not sure what to do next. If I followed Lena now, what would I say when I found her? After all, I don't even understand what this is all about. My cluelessness and silly attempts to console her would only upset her more. Guess we better let her be alone for some time. That didn't sound very confident. Whatever. Without another word, Elisa headed back to the boat. The whole way across the river to the pier was a hell of a trip. I had to stop every 10 to 20 meters to take a break. Elisa was staring at the river and didn't pay any attention to me. Well, this seems to be the first situation here in camp that is completely beyond my comprehension, even though ultimately it is just a trivial, everyday situation. I wasn't this confused even during the all-night expedition to the old camp. After all, If you have a closer look, there isn't anything strange here at all. Lena is a very shy and perhaps even introverted person, yet she's human and can't completely avoid normal human developments. Considering that, her reaction fits the situation quite well. Even if I don't get the source of the quarrel, it's clear as day that the girls would not behave like that if they didn't have a good reason. And as things were standing, I was that reason. And that's the strangest part of the whole situation. Hey, I'm sorry it went that way. If only I hadn't overheard your conversation. Seems like I was feeling a pathological need to excuse myself. It's not your fault at all, she said absent-mindedly. It's just that you appeared in the right place at the right time and restarted a mechanism that had stood still for a long time. I don't quite get it. Of course you don't. And actually, you shouldn't right now. You'll get it later. She cast an intense glance at me. Damn it. Why does this always happen to me? Both at school and college, trouble seems to have chosen me as its primary target. Someone blocked the classroom door with a mop. I got a written reprimand in my mark book. There was a fight. All things considered, I must have started it. Failed an exam? Well, of course that's my fault, and the teacher who hates me has nothing to do with it. Even my parents always seem to prefer blaming me rather than unfavorable circumstances, a third party's involvement, or the decrees of my providence. At some point, I even started to believe that I somehow do attract trouble. Remember Murphy's Law? In my case, it was like, if something nasty's gonna happen, it's gonna happen to me. For that reason, I always liked to stay out of any trouble where I could become the whipping boy. Well, judging by today, I'm not really good at it. Seems like you got an aura of some sort. You do attract attention. Surprised, I looked at Elisa. She was smiling. Looks like she could read my mind. Trouble, mostly. Who knows? Who knows? She said dreamily as she stared at the river. It's a wonderful night, isn't it? Just like any other, if you ask me. I felt used up. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Just an ordinary night. Nothing special. The best moment to make our most admirable camp leader really happy. She has to know that her favorite pioneer is a nasty pervert who enjoys peeking at naked girls. Something snapped inside me again. You aren't serious, are you? Why? Of course I'm serious. She didn't look like she was joking at all. Well, suit yourself. But do you really think this is the best time to do that? Aren't you supposed to row? I realized that our boat was drifting in the river. Wait! Don't dodge my question! Let's get back to the camp. I'll have a moment to think it over. Getting to spend an entire night in a boat wasn't something I would aspire to, so I had to apply myself to the paddles. We barely made it to the pier. I was exhausted, both because of the rowing and because of Elisa's intent to tell Olga Dmitrovna about this morning's incident. If I know our camp leader, her reaction will be quite predictable. So, you're actually going to visit Olga Dmitrovna now? Are you? Why not? She gave me her most roguish smile. It's night after all. She must be sleeping already. Who knows? She might be awake. Come on, you know full well it was a coincidence. A simple misunderstanding triggered by Uliana. No, I don't. She flung her arms up and headed to the camp. I gathered all my remaining strength, jumped up, and followed her. At first I considered grabbing her arm, but then realized it might not be such a good idea after everything that happened today. Hold on. I trudged unenergetically along next to her. Let's talk this over. Is there anything to discuss? We silently walked alongside each other for some time. At least she walked slowly so that I had no trouble keeping pace with her, and I was thankful for it. Hey, is there anything I can do to convince you not to tell Olga Dmitrovna? Not sure, but, well, there is one thing. We came to the square. So, What is it? Well, stop chasing Lena, for instance. For God's sakes, what makes her think I'm chasing Lena? I started to lose my temper. Why are you making up such nonsense? You started that quarrel in the forest because because of you we had to go to the island and here we go again. Enough is enough. I am not chasing her. Elisa stood still, bright moonshine lighting up her face which showed evident signs of resentment and displeasure. Like I don't see how you look at her. How do I look at her? Like that. Like what? You know. She shifted her gaze but remained standing still. Hey, stop seeing everyone through your twisted imagination. If you can't stop making up nonsense stories, then at least keep them to yourself. Don't make others suffer because of your stories and because of you and your stories. I don't care if you pick on me, but now you got Lena involved. I really lost my temper for good, but Elisa didn't answer. We sank into unexpected silence that was only broken by Elisa's sparse sobs. From bad to worse, now you were crying. Have you all gone mad here? I clasped my hands in despair. I could understand why Lena was crying, but seeing Elisa crying is unthinkable to say the least. I can't even see her reasoning. At any other time, I would definitely be shocked, but at this moment, I'm just too tired for that. My mind was absolutely blank. To be precise, it was so heavy and full, so that not even a single idea would have the chance to dwell there. If I would compare my brain at its prime to a broad highway full of speeding thoughts overtaking each other and causing giant chaotic crashes, then now it's nothing but a forgotten tiny path in a distant, desolate forest, which is only used in times of absolute necessity. Elisa kept silent. At least she stopped crying. If you really think it's so serious, go ahead and tell everything to Olga Dmitrovna. I hope it makes you feel better. Okay, I won't do it, she said quietly and turned to me. The tears were gone, but her face seemed to express absolute sorrow at the world. I'm just feeling hurt. What hurt you? I asked her tiredly. It's always like that. She gets all the attention and always pushes me aside. I had difficulty understanding what she was talking about and decided to play along. Hopefully she'd finally leave me alone. That's not true. You do draw attention, and people don't overlook you. I don't. I raised my eyes and looked at her. Her facial expression was a mixture of amazement and expectation. See? So could you... All of a sudden her voice became so tender that I flinched in astonishment. Elisa's face turned red, and she hid her eyes. So, you really think that I'm as good as her? I wanted to say something like, even better, but I stopped myself. Yes, I do. It seems that she didn't understand that I said it all absolutely insincerely. Alright, time to sleep, Elisa suddenly yelled cheerfully. Now she was acting more like herself again. See you tomorrow. She waved her hand and ran away. I sighed in relief. Well, it was over for today. All my remaining energy was wasted on a sprint to Olga Dmitrovna's cabin. There was no light, so trying not to awake the camp leader, I undressed quietly and lay down. It's still interesting. What did Elisa mean? And Lena. It's become totally unclear what is going on with them and with me, as if we got sucked into some sort of vortex which started to swirl with furious power. But what's going to happen next? And where will I be thrown then? I woke up early when Olga Dmitrovna was still asleep. I stretched and sat up in the bed. I felt surprisingly okay, although I should have slept through the day after what had happened the night before. Quietly, so as not to wake the camp leader, I took the bag with my washing stuff. washing up stuff and went outside. I forgot to look at the clock, but it seemed like 6 or 7 in the morning. The camp was asleep. The grass was shaking off the night dew. A light fog hung above the ground, and the sun was just beginning to break through the treetops. Not warm at all yet, like the fluorescent lamp in the house across from mine. I took a deep breath of the tasty cold air and thought that even a night owl like me can enjoy waking up this early sometimes. The streets of the camp were empty, of course. The water here has always been cold, but today it seemed like they got it from the Antarctic depths. Even my hands were numb from it. Finishing with my hygiene, I decided to walk around the camp a bit. Olga Dmitrovna is asleep. Breakfast's not for a while yet, so there's nothing to do. I came to the square and looked at Genda. That guy doesn't care if it's day or night. He's alert. I smiled at my successful joke and headed to the boat shed. As I walked, I hummed some song, absolutely sure I was the only one awake here. To my great surprise, I saw someone sitting at the pier, hanging her feet in the water. Elisa. I came closer and stopped, not sure what to say. Then she suddenly turned around and stared at me. Been standing here long? No. Why aren't you asleep? Why aren't you? She turned back and stared at the river again. Looks like I'm not the only one in a good mood today. At least she wasn't being sassy again. Can't sleep. I see. About yesterday. You get everything, right? What exactly? Oh, for God's sake! My answer didn't seem to go down too well. Alright, I did. I lied. Alright, good. She suddenly looked straight into my eye and smiled. In that case, I have plans for you tonight. Huh? May I ask what they are? You don't need to know. Well, since I'm part of them, you'll know when it's time. Can you give me a hint at least? Nope. She got up and walked towards me. A bit scared, I cleared the way. Don't do anything stupid, Elisa said, moving away from the boat shed. I wonder what she meant. And what are those plans? I had no wish to become part of some terrorist act against a monument or anything. Besides, I was still haunted by yesterday's talk with Lena on the island. She's probably still angry, and I never managed to explain everything to her. Although I didn't even know what I would say if I had the chance. I felt guilty about everything that had happened, but I couldn't figure out what exactly I was guilty of. The camp was starting to wake up. Breakfast was at least an hour away, but I had no desire to go back to the camp leader's cabin, so I decided to wait by the canteen. At least I'd be the first one there for once. I sat on the steps and watched the sun rising. Sometimes it's great to just watch a new day come. I was overwhelmed with complete peace and tranquility. There were no thoughts to tear up my brain as they usually do. I simply bathed in the warm rays of the heaven star. In any other place and circumstances, I could probably even say that I was happy. Good morning. You're early today. I looked up and saw Lena standing in front of me. She was smiling. You too. All of last night's events flashed before my eyes. Listen. If this is about yesterday, please don't. She interrupted me sharply. I don't know what came over me. It was all... Just forget it. She stared at me. Lena seemed much more confident than usual. If only it was that simple. There's nothing complicated about this. She sat down next to me. So close I felt a bit awkward, but made no attempt to move away from her. Sometimes I have disputes with Elisa. Yeah, I realized. I see. But in this case, it happened because of me. Who knows? She answered, lost in thought. So that's why, you know, I'm embarrassed. Perhaps I really am to blame. Or rather, I'm not trying to say that I'm to blame. I'm not to blame, but I was trying to explain myself like a 5th grader to a teacher. Okay, don't. As I said, nothing serious happened. If you think so. You should just think about how to act from now on. Not again. I covered my face in my hands, clearly showing that I have absolutely no idea what's going on here, and that everything, to put it mildly, is very unpleasant for me. Could you express yourself any clearer? What for? She said evasively. Look, if I don't know what I did wrong, I can't do any better. I can't decide on how to act, as you say. I think you'll understand. I would like to behave. I would like to believe that as well, but the canteen door suddenly flew open, and Olga Dmitrievna came out. Sitting around hungry this early? She said playfully. Good morning, Lena said merrily. She got up and headed inside. Shall we? Yeah, sure. We were not done talking, but pioneers appeared out of nowhere and flooded the place. By the time I got my breakfast, Lena was already sitting, surrounded by Miku, Xenia, Slavia. Sadly, there were no more free chairs at their table. Feeling down, and deliberately not saying hi to anybody, I headed to my favorite place in the far corner of the canteen. I chewed my oatmeal. It really was chewy today. And washed it down with some cold tea. Then I began to watch the others. All the pioneers seemed to be here. Some were chatting, some, like Electronic and Sharik, were immersed in chewing, and some were gawping around, like me. I was just about to leave when Uliana jumped over to my table with her tray heaped with food. Bon appetit, she blurted. Stealing again? I asked openly, staring at her tray. A growing body requires a lot of calories. Yeah, you really should grow up a bit, I whispered. What? I didn't think she heard me. Nothing. I headed out. Leaving so soon? She yelled at my back, disheartened. I gave no answer. I should have taken the washing up stuff back in. I don't want to carry it around all day. Besides, what am I going to do today? Nothing at all came to mind. I was in such a mood that it seemed like someone was going to show up and invite me on a journey. I left the camp leader's cabin and paused for a moment, then heard a voice calling out to me. Semyon! It was Slavia. Busy? Nope. Can you help me? Of course. I didn't want to look for answers on a wonderful day like this. A couple dozen hours wouldn't change my situation after all. What is it? You should stop by the Cybernetics Club. I don't know why exactly. They'll tell you everything. The unfortunate inventors again. All right. Thank you. She gave me a nice smile and ran off. So a journey to the enemy's lair lies ahead of me. To the lair of evil Dr. Electronic and diabolic Professor Sharik. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I pushed the door firmly and entered. Semyon. Electronic said a bit ominously, glancing up from some contraption he had been poking with a screwdriver. Slavia sent me. I know. And? What? The second door opened and Sharik came in. Semyon. He greeted me in the same tone Electronic had. Well, I was last time I checked, I joked. So what do you need from me? We have an important task for you. I'm listening. The nurse came by yesterday. He stopped as if he wasn't going to continue. So? I asked carefully. So we have an important mission for you. I got that already. You were to deliver a package to her. Can't you do that yourselves? The infirmary is right over there, I said skeptically. We can't, Electronic said, surprised. What a weird couple indeed. I see. Not another heavy bag, I hope? No, nothing like that. He smiled. All right, fine. I carefully agreed. Hold on. Sharik disappeared through the door and soon came back holding something wrapped in paper. Just be careful. All right, all right. I took the package. If the pioneers weren't passing me, I took the package. If the pioneers weren't passing me the keys into the pearly gates, it still looked like they were at least giving me the Olympic torch. Can I go? Of course, Electronic said threateningly. Just be careful, Sharik pleaded. Outside, I took a good look at the package. They never told me not to open it, although it would make sense to go further on. I quickly walked to the square and, making sure that nobody was following, slipped into the forest. I just stood there for a while, indecisive, looking at the package. I wonder, what's in it? Why is it so important for them? Why couldn't they take it themselves? I had a lot of questions. I opened the package and saw it was a bottle of vodka. Well, so what? Pioneer's bringing a bottle of vodka to the nurse. Or rather, I'm doing it for them. Happens every day. I wrapped the bottle back up and scratched my head. This isn't weird anymore. This is just stupid. So stupid I couldn't think of one intelligent theory. I stood there for a while longer and thought I shouldn't let such a wonderful chance slip away. I quickly walked to the camp leader's cabin. Thank God, Olga Dmitrovna was not there. I snuck inside and began to rifle through the contents of the table drawer. Soon, the vodka was in a soda bottle, while in its place was some water for the plants. Happy with my clever plan, I went out and skipped along the way to the infirmary. Seriously, what is so wrong about that? They almost got me into a trap. If the camp leader had seen me, if anyone else had, I could have managed myself. So it was absolutely nothing. I gathered all my strength and knocked on the infirmary door. Hello, Pioneer. Hello. I have a package for you. A bottle for your armpit. A package for your cabinet. I was so euphoric I began to talk nonsense. Ah, she said. Hand it over. I handed her the package. The nurse stuffed it into the desk drawer without looking. You didn't open it, did you? Of course not, I blurted out. Good boy. All right, so I'll be... Go, Pioneer. I closed the door behind me and let out a sigh. I could always pin this on the crazy inventors, and in my situation, I could really use even the most basic form of stress relief. I came to the square. The clock showed noon. That meant dinner was coming. I sat on the bench with the solid intention of not moving from here until the come and get it bell sound comes. Pioneers were running by. They were smiling and shouting merrily. Yes, the day was definitely a wonderful one. I glanced over the square and saw Lena approaching. Relaxing? Something like that. She sat by me and looked at the sky. Nice day, huh? It is. It was a bit awkward. Lena seemed different. She was not embarrassed. Her face was not red. She was confident. So, about that conversation. I told you everything already. Yeah, but just forget it. If you say so. We sat for a little longer in silence. I just can't. Not like that. So, what do you think about Elisa? She said, ignoring my inquiry. What do I think about Elisa? I repeated, lost in thought. I don't really know. Why? You're just so worried about yesterday. Well, of course, but what does that have to do with it? There's a direct connection there. She laughed. Let's assume. So what? Well, and again I started thinking. Really, what do I think of her? Well, she can be arrogant sometimes. That's right. What else can I say? Now that I think about it, I don't know Elisa at all. The way she acts does annoy me sometimes. If you were wondering if I had any negative feelings about her, then no. She gets carried away. But everyone has their quirks. Lena stared at me. Really? Did I say something wrong? No, not really. She laughed out loud one more time, just before the lunch bell sound came. Alright, see you. I didn't stop her, although I had a lot of questions left. But how do I ask them? And should I? I got up and shuffled into the canteen. There were only a few spots left, so I had to sit with Electronic and Sharik. Did you deliver it? Yeah. I answered lazily, poking my fork at the buckwheat kasha. No incidents? No incidents. What was in there, anyway? You didn't open it, did you? He stared. No. Great. Finishing my meal, I went out. I was struck by a sudden yawn. Taking a nap wouldn't be a bad idea. I headed to the camp leader's cabin. It felt like the summer sun was going to melt the whole planet, together with all its inhabitants. There was nowhere to hide. The sunlight seemed to reflect from every surface. Looking up, you risk going blind. Using my last bit of strength, I pulled the door handle, entered the room, and fell on the bed. Of course, I wouldn't expect the cabin to be really cool, but it was much better than outside. Blissfully, I stretched out on the bed and closed my eyes. Strangely, sleep deserted me. I was overwhelmed with thoughts, teeming in my head. Here is another theory, a solution to the problem of how I got here. Here's an explanation of what's going on here. And here's the true form of all those inhabiting this place. I remembered Lena saying, "What do you think about Elisa?" Seriously, what do I think of her? What can I think of a person I've only known for a few days? Can I just draw conclusions based on a couple of words and deeds? Although her deeds, I laughed a bit. Any relevant organization would draw the right conclusion based on the monument bombing. Still though, I don't care. Maybe I really don't think anything of her. Can one be interested in a person who's not interesting? No, that's some sort of absurdity. A knock on the door. Come in. I was too lazy to get up, so I just sat up a little bit. The door opened and I saw Elisa. What a coincidence. She stopped, unsure, and stared at me for a couple of seconds. I guess you were looking for the camp leader? You have drawn the conclusion that you have a boner? Wonderful. Why would she, though? No. What's up, then? I was looking for you. She sounded calm and not aggressive at all. I caught myself thinking I was not afraid of her and had no concerns when she behaved like that normally. What for? I want to make everything clear. She sat on the bed across from me. What exactly? I want to clean up any misunderstandings or miscommunications. Alright, I'm up for that. Have you spoken with Lena today? Yes. About what? Nothing, really. You're lying. Elisa looked stiff and worried. She crossed her legs and bit her lip. You do understand I'm always assumed to be guilty whenever anything happens. Well, you always are guilty, I said thoughtlessly. A spark flashed in her eyes, but she kept talking calmly. Maybe. But in this case, me and Lena, we're always like that. Even if she starts something, she's all innocent and I take all the blame. So, you're saying that Lena... Actually, I don't really know what you're saying. You never understand anything, do you? She fumed. This is strange. I wouldn't call myself slow. So explain. You do know Lena likes you. She went red after those words. No, I answered truthfully. Well, now you do. Now I do. An uncomfortable silence overtook the room. I was processing what she said, and Elisa seemed unsure of how to continue the conversation. Lena likes me. Could I have ever guessed? Unlikely. My intuition is usually good, but when it's about me and my feelings, it does not work at all. The weirdest thing was, I accepted the news with almost no worries. Right at that moment, I was listening to Elisa. I was focused only on her. I could think about the rest later. And she thinks I'm going to steal you away from her. She thinks that all the time, understand? Even though it's always the other way around. Everyone looks at her because she's such an angel, and nobody pays any attention to me. To them, I'm just a shoulder to cry on. Elisa started screaming. Look, Please don't get upset. I don't think of you like that. Of course. I still had no idea what forced her to be so honest, and I didn't know how to react. Moreover, I was not worried at all. It was like I was watching another episode of some TV series, and what was going on in the room was on the other side of the screen. I understand. I was the reason for all of it. But today Lena said it was okay. That's just like her. You've probably realized that she's not as quiet as she wants to seem. I started to guess. If I can do anything, tell me. Elisa raised her eyes. Only then did I see she's been crying. Some sort of worry stirred inside of me. I could not treat this conversation like I was an outsider anymore. Do you like Lena, or do you like me? I guess I should have expected a question like that, but I just wasn't ready. Just like that. Lena is nice, of course, but Elisa has her good points as well. I'm probably not. Besides, the way she was at that moment, she could seriously compete with Lena. I don't really know you two at all. A question like that, it's difficult to answer directly. If I could say no, I would have, at that very moment. But I only had one chance for the other answer as well, and I didn't know what to choose. You did want the situation to resolve itself. Of course, but why but again? Why again? Why? Look, we're going nowhere with this. Well, answer then. Her face fell back into its usual bold arrogance. I need some time to think. Well, go ahead and think. Elisa stood up abruptly and headed out. Don't forget, we have plans for tonight, she said on the threshold of smiling. The door closed behind her, and before I could say anything... Plans? What kind of plans? The talk with Elisa left a heavy impression on me. So, Lena likes me. On its own, the news could shock and startle. And I, above that, was also forced to make a choice, a difficult one, to put it mildly. And any choice I make would be a mistake for someone. If only I could refuse them both, although I didn't like the word refuse itself. If I could just answer her question with a no, it would be easier. But I knew it couldn't work like that. After all, I talked to Elisa. I realized that nothing would be the same ever again. It can't be, no matter what happens. And I'll have to make a decision. Since I rejected the no scenario, I needed to pick a positive solution. If, of course, I could live with it. But I was sure that out of all the possible outcomes, there's one that won't just satisfy everyone, but would also be one that I wouldn't want to strive for. And the choice seems obvious. Lena. What? I don't want Lena, I want the other one. I want the other one! She's cute, she's kind. But then again, there's something about Elisa that attracted me. Suddenly the door flew open and Olga Dmitrievna came in. Lounging around again, huh? Just resting. It's so hot out there. Go and help Slavia. She was asking around. Where? I asked lazily. On the sports field. Reluctantly, I got up and headed out. I should really air my brain out anyway. There were a lot of people at the sports grounds. Some were playing football, others were playing badminton. Younger kids were just chasing each other. Semyon! Slavia walked up to me. You require my assistance? I asked, all official like. Yeah. Listen, did you take the infirmary key? No. Why me again, anyway? Well, you were there a lot recently. I guess she's right. No. Maybe you know who did? No, why? The nurse came up to ask me for my key. You know, you know that I have a key to every building in the camp. She said hers went missing. Could she have lost? Oh, well, fuck it. Could she have lost it? I shrugged. No, she says she couldn't have. I don't know, okay? Okay. She smiled and ran off. I headed to the camp leader's house, determined to get some sleep after all. Olga Dmitrovna wasn't there, thank God, so I fell in the bed and lost consciousness. I don't exactly remember what I dreamt of, but it left a heavy impression, as afternoon naps often do. I put some effort into getting off the bed and looked at the clock. It was just after 7. Not surprising if you think about it. I should have expected to sleep through the day. Although, as it turns out, I missed dinner as well. That thought made me uncomfortable, and I headed to the exit. I stopped on the threshold and thought of what to do next. I don't know how long I would have stood there. My head was my head was still heavy after sleep, if someone hadn't called out to me. Slavia was quickly walking towards the cabin. Semyon, she started, breathless. Are you sure you don't have the infirmary key? Of course not. Why would I need it? Well, do you know who took it? No, I don't. Why? Well, something has gone missing. What? Something important. Slavia hesitated. Some medication. So all this disturbance was started because of some medicine? Although, I pondered. I mean, I have the bottle in my cabin. Did she mean that? I tried to keep my face still as stone without doing anything to give myself away. Okay. I don't know. I'm sorry. Okay, Slavia said in frustration. I looked at her and tried to figure out how bad... What is this music? What is this music? I looked at her and tried to figure out how bad the situation was for me, or whether I was in trouble at all. On the one hand, the vodka, I did steal it. Then again, she's saying it's gone, as in disappeared, all by itself, with no external influence. Although it's unlikely that she would say that a bottle of trophy vodka was stolen from the infirmary, so the way it was said was okay. The problem was different. I suddenly got really scared. What if they find out it was me? Even if it wasn't about the bottle, they'd still find it. They'd still find it while looking for what was gone. Basically, I had to get a move on. And the main thing to do right now is to get rid of all the evidence. I jumped into the cabin, shoved the bottle under my belt, and raced to the forest. Burying it somewhere was the best decision at the moment. I took my time looking for a spot, never noticing night falling on the camp. A familiar voice surprised me. Hey! I struggled to turn back, making my face look as casual as possible. So, what's going on here? Oh, just having a walk. My voice sounded calm, but I already understood I couldn't fool Elisa. Alone? At night? In the woods? Well, yeah. Well, what's wrong? Nothing. Nothing at all. She stared at me. Okay then. Oh. Hold on. Aren't you forgetting something? Don't think so. We had an agreement. About? About tonight. I think she's right. There was something like that. Yes, but you see... No, I don't. Let's go. She turned around and gestured me to follow. I thought there was no point in arguing. Any word or action could give me away. And then, sighing, I followed. It was a couple of minutes before we reached her cabin. While we were walking, I was busy trying to find the best time and place to ditch the vodka, but Elisa stayed so close that I couldn't manage everything. Well? She stared at me. Well, what? I was so nervous that my hair was wet with sweat. The only thing on my mind at that moment was how to adjust the bottle so she wouldn't notice. What do you say? About what? Elisa pondered. Okay, I guess you're right. I brought you here, so I'm the one to decide. Okay, I agreed, unsure. Hold on a minute. She reached under the bed and in a few seconds pulled out the bottle of vodka. I was shocked. Surprised, huh? Of course. Not by the vodka itself, though, but the fact that it was the exact bottle I carried to the infirmary in the morning. The murky contents gave it away. So? Elisa looked at me teasingly. What? Want to take a shot? I didn't even know what to say to that. What she had was rotten water. The real vodka was in the bottle under my belt. Well, I kind of... Don't tell me you don't drink. Elisa pouted. I don't know. No, I just... Alright then, just a second. In an instant, Elisa got 2 glasses and filled them to the brim. Let's do this, she said, giving me one of the glasses and downed hers before I could answer. Ugh! She gasped. In a moment, she realized. What on earth is that? She said, spitting. They call this vodka? Despite my difficulty, I couldn't help laughing. What are you laughing at? Elisa shouted, red in the face. I'm asking you, what's so funny? It actually is funny. So you're having fun? Drink yours. We'll see how you laugh then. I had no desire to try the stale water, but just to avoid making her suspicious, I asked, So, how does it taste? Like rotten water, Elisa said, upset. I was just going to relax a bit, have a cultured timeout, and then it... A cultured timeout? I repeated as a new bout of laughter bent me in half. Hey, stop it! Elisa shouted and jumped at me. She was trying to hit me, or bite me, or something. Maybe her plan was to crush me to death with her authority. I just grabbed her hands, and all she could do was gasp in powerless anger. All was going fine, but then Elisa's legs slid, and she began to fall. I let go of her hands, so she fell right on top of me, painfully headbutting me in the nose. I moaned in pain, threw her off, and turned to the side. What do we have here? When I realized she had taken the bottle, all the pain disappeared. Give that back! I tried to get the bottle back, but Elisa nimbly jumped off the bed and ran to the far corner of the room. Let's see. Huh. She immediately removed the cap and took a big gulp. In a moment, her face went red and her eyes seemed to pop out of their sockets. What is this? She rasped while coming back to her senses. That's the actual vodka. I seemed to have come to terms with my defeat. But where did you get it? You really thought you had stolen the right one from the infirmary? She nodded. Well, it was the right bottle, sure, but the contents? Man, you're clever. She was starting to slur her words. Elisa came to the window, poured the water out of my glass, and replaced it with vodka. Come on! I don't want it. Really, this is not the right time or place. Drink it, or else I'll tell everyone you stole the bottle. But it was you. Well, you have the vodka. You can't prove that. You think I even have to? Elisa said maliciously. Unsure what to do, I stared at the glass. What's important is to get rid of the vodka. This was just one of the ways to do it. I breathed out abruptly and swallowed the contents of the glass in one quick motion. A short moment after that, I regretted it. Got any food to chase this? Wait a second. Elisa said excitedly and pulled out a huge stick of ham out of a drawer. I tore it from her hands and bit off a big piece. Phew. So, how was it? You're asking... It's not like I have full strength booze every day, you know. I didn't really understand how I'd agreed to this so easily. Well, how was it? Like, double bubble with vodka flavor. All right, time for another round then. She opened the bottle again and poured us half a glass each. Don't you think that's enough? No way. Well, since we already started, the alcohol was starting its work. Without a second thought, I gulped down the vodka. Elisa was definitely less experienced. She was having some trouble with her second glass. Ugh. How does it... She seemed really drunk already. If you can't take the heat, stay out of the kitchen, I said merrily, pouring myself some more. Somewhere deep inside I realized it was too much, but the gun was already loaded. How about me? Elisa was outraged. Haven't you had enough? No way! She grabbed the bottle from my hand and started to drink straight from it. Hey, we have glasses, you know. Screw 'em! She shouted and roared in laughter. This is so cool, she said, catching her breath. Sure, it's not bad. I looked at the bottle. We'd gone through 2/3. I was definitely drunk by that point, and Elisa seemed even worse. Then again, there was barely anything left. I sighed and poured a full glass for myself and half for Elisa. That's all. With these words, she chucked the bottle from the window. What if they find it? Oh, who cares? We both laughed. Okay then, for all the ladies present, I grunted and drank. And for the gentlemen, she followed my lead. I'm getting dizzy. She undid a few buttons on her shirt. I carefully looked at her. Had she always been this beautiful? Or is everyone beautiful to me at this point? Whichever it was, I could not force myself to look away. You're gonna stare a hole through me if you keep going like that. Elisa laughed. Sorry. Embarrassed, I stared at my feet. You can look if you're so interested. With some effort, I opened an eye and saw her continuing to unbutton her shirt. No words could escape my mouth. Besides, who needs words at a moment like this? What happened then was what was supposed to happen. At the time, I was unable to think of what was right to do. And I didn't want to. It just felt good. The light bulb burned out, or one of us turned off the light, but either way, the room went dark. I looked around her cabin and thought of something. Where's Uliana? What, you're afraid someone will come in and see us? She grinned warmly. Could happen. I asked her to spend the night at another girl's cabin. Wait, so you planned all this? Well, not something like this, of course. She looked at me intently, smiled, and closed her eyes. Yeah. I stared at the ceiling for a while longer and soon heard quiet, deep breathing. Elisa was asleep. My head ached suddenly. The alcohol seemed to be wearing off. Best thing to do in this case was to follow her lead and get some sleep as well. Before I finished the thought, I was already fast asleep. Some people were chasing me. Or maybe they weren't people, but fuzzy black blots with a hellish landscape in the background. I ran, stumbling over something, having no air to breathe. My whole essence was overtaken by primal fear and terror. And then, a memory lapse. I opened my swollen eyelids, only for my eyes to be struck by bright daylight. A terrible taste in my mouth, pains all over my body, and a severe headache. Seems someone was drinking hard yesterday. After coming to my senses, I started to recall the events of last night. I believe there was a bottle of vodka, which I happily emptied together with Elisa. I tried to stand up, but something was pinning my left arm. It was the peacefully snoring Elisa. Everything that happened returned to my mind. Fear was quickly replaced by a feeling of euphoria. I relaxed lazily on the bed, enjoying a beautiful hungover morning. Sometime later, Elisa woke up. I kissed her softly and said, "Good morning." She gave me a blank look for a couple of seconds, then jumped up shouting, You... Me what? Yesterday you... She hissed. But it was kinda your idea. I was drunk! So was I, what can you do? Elisa was furiously looking at me, but then calmed down and sat beside me. Alright, whatever happened, happened. You sure? I got up and tried to hug her. Don't, she whispered, blushing. Why? Because. Elisa frantically shook her head. Because it's 4 o'clock already. And what? Don't tell me you're late for something. Everyone will leave without us. Leave where? Today's the last day. Last day of what? I asked, completely confused. The last day of the term. What? The hangover seemed to have already passed a while ago. Made a sharp comeback. Don't tell me you didn't know, asked Elisa in surprise. So you did know it? Well, yeah. But I'd forgotten it somehow. And what should we do now? Actually, that wasn't the main thing I was concerned about. If today is the last day, then everyone will go somewhere, so I could get out of this camp somehow. Well, I have no idea. Maybe we could still make it. I jumped out of the bed and started dressing quickly. It was difficult as my coordination was badly disturbed by yesterday's lavish indulgence. What are you waiting for? Elisa didn't reply, but started dressing too. A couple of minutes later, we were standing at the deserted square. Let's go to the camp leader's cabin. After opening Olga Dmitryevna's cabin with my key, I found nobody inside. We checked the entire camp and found that we were alone here. After returning to the square, I sat down and covered my face with my hands like a doomed man. I still felt sick, but now it turned out that I had to solve a serious problem. Where would they have gone? Well, to District Center, I guess. Do you know where that is? Approximately. Is it possible to reach on foot? Don't know. And how long would it take by bus? A couple of hours. Quickly, I reckoned with how much that is kilometers. Taking into consideration the quality of the Soviet motor car industry and Soviet roads, one could presume that it's quite possible to reach on foot, provided that Elisa knows the exact direction. Moreover, in my situation, it's not easy to decide such steps, but we can't stay here either, alone, without food, in a deserted pioneer camp. In real life, it would definitely be a bad idea, and I had no other choice but to treat everything happening as reality. Let's go. Where? To the district center. Are you mad? You'd prefer to stay here? Sure. They'll notice we're missing, and we'll return. Don't you think it's odd that they didn't notice during a departure? Well, yeah, but... She started to think. But to go somewhere all on our own... But you said you knew the direction. I do. She agreed without confidence. So what's there to think about? Maybe we'll encounter some local buses on the way. I don't really believe that myself, but if there's an exit from this camp, this idea seems quite solid. I don't know. As you say, she prattled on confusedly. Then start packing your stuff. Meet me here in half an hour. I ran towards Olga Dmitryevna's cabin. Yes, not much to pack. I tossed my warm clothes into a bag, and I was about to go when an interesting thought crossed my mind. What would I actually need them for? It doesn't seem to be late summer, so what's the point of dragging an unnecessary weight along, especially since I don't know how far I have to walk? After reasoning that one could survive such weather without a coat and warm boots, I shoved my cell phone with its dying battery into my pocket and went into the square. I had to wait at least 20 minutes for Elisa. My hangover seemed to ease a little so I could better focus on the previous night. What does she really mean to me? Was it drunken sex or something more? Naturally, I can't speak for Elisa. It's difficult to even speak for myself. I began to remember the course of my acquaintance with her, how she teased and mocked me at first, her arrogance and self-confidence. It was more than compensated for by the tenderness of last night. It was already clear that she's not the person she wants to seem like. But what kind of person is the real Elisa? And do I have any feelings towards her? I do feel sympathy, a sort of affection, but is there something more? My reflections were interrupted by Elisa. Here, take it. She held out a huge backpack to me. What's this? I asked skeptically. My stuff. Why so little? I brought as much as I could fit. Look, we don't know how far we have to go. Maybe you can take only the most necessary thing. So what? I just have to throw it away? Leave it here? Elisa sniffed. Firstly, I couldn't understand why she even has that much stuff. And secondly, what's so valuable in there? But the chivalrous duty of carrying it is mine, isn't it? Of course. She smiled archly. I evaluated how much it would weigh. About 10 kilos, I guess. I can carry this for a few kilometers, but not much further than that. You do understand that we'll not get very far with it. Well, we'll do our best. You mean I can throw something out later? We'll see. She answered with her eyes flashing slyly. Okay, I'm taking you at your word. After all, as I have to carry it, I have the right to throw things out of it. And so our journey began. It took me at least an hour to start getting tired. I would have never thought that I possessed such stamina. Either the backpack was easy to carry, or last night's exercises had trained my muscles. I stopped on the roadside and threw Elisa's belongings to the ground. What are you doing? She was clearly resentful. Do you want to carry it yourself? Of course not. In that case, I need to rest. Naturally, the most rational decision was to get rid of most of the stuff, keeping only the most necessary things, but I couldn't bring myself to such drastic measures. You've been keeping silent for the whole time. Elisa was staring vacantly down the road that receded into the distance. What is there to talk about? Don't know. But you're behaving as if nothing happened. Did something happen? She asked absent-mindedly. Well, you know. Had enough rest? Then let's go. Elisa began to quickly walk away from me. Hey, wait a minute. I shouldered the backpack and ran after her. We've been traveling in silence for some time, with Elisa slightly ahead and me behind. I had no idea how to start a conversation. She seems to be giving out obvious hints that the night's events were one big mistake. At least it seemed so to me. Though from my point of view, what happened was meant to happen. For the last few days in camp, I'd definitely been attracted to Elisa, and I believe she was attracted to me as well. In that case, what's the problem? Maybe she doesn't want it to be just a one-night stand? You know, she turned and looked at me. If I did something wrong, you did nothing wrong. But it just turned out this way. So it was just an accident? I didn't say that. Then what did you say? My inability to get a straight answer made me begin to lose my temper, and I raised my voice. You're just giving me hints, ambiguities. What about straightforwardness, sincerity? You weren't like this before. People tend to change. She slowly paced forward. Change? You call this change? You're a completely different person now. Just like Lena, really. Elisa stopped but didn't turn. Don't compare. Got it? Don't compare me with her. She spoke quietly, but there was a rage in her voice. What? I was somewhat taken aback. You blame me for everything, but what about yourself? You're constantly looking at her. Even now you managed to see her in me. Wait, why did you come yesterday then? You could have gone to her. You did know. Did know what? Did know that I was waiting for you. It seems that making this confession was a hard decision for Elisa, but at first I assigned little significance to her words. Well, you yourself told me to come yesterday, so I... This isn't about that. Elisa burst into sobs and covered her face with her hands. I was completely taken aback. I still didn't get what she was hinting at, so it was impossible to talk normally. Sorry. Forgive me. Stop apologizing. But if I said or did something wrong... So what's the point in apologizing if you already did? Better to behave yourself from the beginning. But I don't know how. Elisa looked up at me. There was so much sorrow in her gaze that I couldn't bear it and turned away. We stood like that for some time. Soon she seemed to pull herself back together. Okay, forget it. Let's move on. Naturally, I couldn't forget it even if I wanted to. But I had nothing to say anyway, so I followed her in silence. The sun was slowly moving below the horizon. I was immersed in thoughts and even forgot about that heavy backpack on my back. I had to say something, do something. Elise is expecting me to, at least a few words. But what should I begin with? I'd gotten used to everything in my life being quite simple. Any task seemed to be already finished after only a few steps. Instead of considering the long way to my goal, I immediately started thinking about the results and enjoying an unachieved victory. Moreover, I doubt I'd have to face a situation like this in the real world. Obviously, for a long time I dreamed about a person who would care about me. But right now, such a person is in front of me, and yet I feel nothing. And I can't tell Elisa either yes or no, just because I don't know what will happen next. Meanwhile, it got dark. I guess we should make camp for the night. There's not that much left to go. Are you sure? And even if that's so, it's better to travel during the daytime. You know best, she answered coldly. We stopped at the edge of a wood. Got anything useful in there? I pointed at the backpack. Have a look. Mainly footwear and clothes were there, but on the bottom I found a magazine and a box of matches, quite enough to light a fire. Soon we were sitting on a fallen tree and warming our hands by the fire. Only now did I finally realize that I'd finally gotten out of that damn camp. I'd found no answers. On the contrary, everything had become more tangled as, I guess, I am to spend the rest of my life in this reality. If I don't take into consideration all the sci-fi stuff, it's clear that I'm somewhere in the South and at the end of the 80s. How, and more importantly, why I was brought here is not so important now, as I have to somehow adapt. And I ought to begin with the girl sitting by my side. So what will we do when we reach the district center? Call our parents. What else? Elisa smiled slightly. Someone had to call. And then? And then it's all over. Meaning, well, we leave for our homes. I wasn't really surprised by this answer. I just hadn't thought about what would happen after the term ended. And that's it? What else is there? I don't know. After all that's happened. But nothing happened at all, she told me merrily. What do you mean nothing happened? You'll have the chance to find Lena. I was surprised, but Elisa said it absolutely kindly. As if I need Lena. Don't you? To be honest, Lena was the last person I was thinking about now. No. Then maybe it's me? I looked at Elisa attentively. She grinned spitefully, and she was weeping just recently. What about you? I evaded the question. What do you think about me? I don't know. Maybe you can just say it straight out? A long silence fell. Elisa is waiting for a straight answer, but I can't sort it out for myself. The pioneer camp, and now the girl who wants to hear something. I can't say that easily. You see, and then I really understood. Understood that now it's no use trying to be cunning and holding things back. I almost managed to break out of the cage. The worst is over. Or, on the contrary, the worst is yet to come, but it's time to speak plainly. You see, what you're expecting from me is almost impossible. Looks like everything's impossible for you, she sniffed. It's weird to say, but it's true. I don't know what will happen to me, not even necessarily tomorrow, but in the next second. And what might it be? Will you vanish into thin air? Quite possibly. She burst into peals of laughter. You know, I was ready for any excuses, but not one like that. These aren't excuses, just listen. Elisa gazed at me attentively, and, it seemed, had no intention of interrupting. You see, I don't belong to this place. I'm not talking about the camp, but the whole world. All of you here are completely strange, incomprehensible people to me. As you are for us, actually. I'm not even sure if you're from my planet or my reality. Quit it now, Elisa said tiredly. Imagine that you once fell asleep and woke up in a completely different place. And not just place, but a different time as well. That's what has happened to me. I used to live in the early 21st century in a city far away from here. I was somewhat older than I look now. I had my own life, regardless of whether it was good or bad, it was my own. And then one night, I took a bus, fell asleep, and woke up here, as a 17-year-old pioneer. Elisa looked at me in surprise. And you expect me to believe you? I don't know. It's up to you. It really wasn't easy for me to tell you that. You're a master storyteller, really. Just a sec. I rummaged through my pockets and showed her my phone. To my great surprise, there was still some battery, and the screen was glowing brightly. Have you ever seen something like this? Do you have something like it? I held it out to Elisa. She fidgeted with it, pressing buttons. Well, some kind of imported foreign toy? So what? It's not a toy. It's a telephone. And where are the wires? Where's the handset? She laughed. There's no need for them. Unfortunately, I can't demonstrate to you how it works because they're still not invented in your time. Yeah, sure, she said skeptically and handed me my phone back. Anyway, it's your decision whether to believe me or not. I told you all this to explain what position I'm in now. I still don't know what would happen to me in an hour, so such decisions... Fine, you don't have to say anymore. And you don't have to make any decisions. She got up and pushed some more firewood into the fire. If I've offended you... Nah, everything's fine, she said coldly. I understand. You're a visitor from the future, so normal girls like me don't interest you. You got me wrong. No, I didn't. It's a very credible, logical, and above all, truthful tale. Any girl would dig it. So you still think I'm making up excuses? Elisa stayed silent. Or that I've gone completely mad? One could expect anything from you. Why do you have to be like this? I said sadly. And what about me? I've done nothing wrong. She grinned spitefully. Just imagine that it's all true, and understand why I have to behave so... I already imagined. Understood. I was about to say something else, but a horn sounded from the road. There was a bus on the roadside. Alias on a regular route. It's odd that we hadn't noticed its approach. At last, salvation. Shall we go? Elisa asked in a completely bland, emotionless voice. Yeah, sure. I grabbed the backpack. I can manage it myself. She took it from me. It's obvious that it was too heavy for her, but I didn't object. Soon, we sat peacefully on the back seat of the bus. Various feelings fought inside me. On one hand, I was glad beyond measure to get to the civilized world. On the other, I was guilt-stricken by the unfinished conversation with Elisa. Sorry that I acted so. You expected something different. I expected nothing of you. She replied coldly. I just want you to understand. And concerning our relationship, I like you. Really. Glad to hear that. But her voice didn't sound so glad. I said it honestly. You see, I don't know what will happen next, but here and now. I guess last night, you liked me even more. No, you misunderstood. Should we do it again while the driver can't see us? Calm down for a second, okay? I didn't think about it. What's the matter? You want it, and I don't care. It's the only thing I'm good for. Elisa, wait. Okay, I want to sleep. She reclined on her seat and closed her eyes. Wait a sec. I'm sleeping. Let's talk later. I didn't object. After all, it's good to seek counsel from your pillow. Besides, Elisa needs some time to calm down. Although, of course, I was desperate to explain everything to her in a way she'd understand. But I held back. Still, I was sick at heart. We were alone on the bus. Outside, dark shadows were passing by. Sometimes it's possible to discern a tree, a river, or the pylons of power transmission line. But the landscape seemed not to differ from the one in the camp. Maybe the world is a circle, and we are just moving around it. Anyway, the surroundings were the least of my concerns now. I just stared at the floor and thought about tomorrow. What will happen? This city, this planet, this time, all are strange to me. In a further talk with Elisa, who was totally disappointed with me, The process of waiting happens to be more tiresome than the result. And finally, things bound to happen don't look so important or fearsome. All your strength is exhausted. There is just tiredness and emptiness in your soul. The bus was driving into the unknown, and I couldn't resist and fell asleep. It seems I'm getting old. The day was over and the hangover should have been long gone, but I felt sick and dizzy. Despite how hard I tried, I was unable to open my eyes. I just rolled over. I wonder what awaits me in the district center. How am I to live? Maybe it's not that all that bad. Well, sure. I don't know where to begin, but on the other hand, this world doesn't seem hostile. I know a lot of things here. Everyone speaks Russian, so maybe nothing bad is going to happen. Suddenly, I felt very sick. Damn it. I thought this was all gone by yesterday evening. I managed to reach the toilet, moving instinctively. After some time, when my dirty business was done, I returned to the room, and then I realized I'm back in my old flat. However, it's not so old. It seems like nothing had changed during the week of my absence. The dust layers haven't even grown thicker. The keyboard position, my monitor incline, and the stain from a cup of tea on the table stung my eyes. Theoretically, a man in my condition shouldn't notice such details, but the entire room drew my attention to the most minor of details, as if it were twinkling with different colors. The socks were thrown around in exactly the same manner as they had been before. The blanket sat rumpled on the unmade bed as it was before. The dirty windows showed the same view of the street like a cracked kinescope. In vain, I tried to become terrified, or at least scared. Maybe it's shock effect, post-traumatic stress disorder, or something like that. After all, several hours ago, I wasn't even thinking of returning to the real world. The pioneer camp, the girls, Elisa, the mythical district center where I would have arrived if I hadn't woken up in my flat, all that had started to seem real to me. Maybe my fantastic vacation on Sovionic was just a dream. My feet started to rack up circles around the room. I held my hands behind my back and started to think everything over. Only one thing is clear. I've returned as suddenly as I arrived there, without any reason or logic. Maybe there was some sort of explanation, but it's beyond my, or human, comprehension. Whether it was tricked by interstellar forces or supreme mind, or government experiments, I believe the last one to be the least likely. They left no clues. If I was unable to find answers in the camp, it would be foolish to expect things to become clearer here. It's like searching for evidence in a house that's been burned to ashes. Even if a crime was committed, all the evidence was destroyed by fire. Maybe if I had the skills and equipment of a criminologist, I could find something, but the memories of the week spent in the camp are all I've got. But it wasn't a dream. I knew it for sure. My hangover was absolutely real. My feelings and emotions were genuine, not just the stuff of dreams. Therefore, I've been there. I spent a week in the Sovionic pioneer camp with the camp leader and the pioneers, with Elisa. Memories of her made me sigh. It would have been great to leave with her. Wait a minute. What's wrong with me? I should be glad I returned home, to the real world. Or shouldn't I? For now I could just evaluate the situation reasonably. I couldn't understand whether I wanted to stay there or enjoy my long-awaited return. I noticed a 5-ruble coin on the table. I took it and began to toss it up without any purpose, counting the number of heads and tails. A long time ago, maybe even in school, I heard that an infinite number of coin tosses, the probabilities are not equal to 50% each. Maybe it's because the coin doesn't have a perfect shape and weight, or because of some other reason. However, after some time, I counted 70 heads and 71 tails. So the theory of relativity lies. But I'm not the man to judge it. I don't know much about it. I recalled my childhood, when I had heard the word tails for the first time. For some reason, it always made me think of squirrels. Maybe there's some logic in this. A squirrel does indeed have a tail. Now this theory seems strange to me, but at the same time, I couldn't find any conclusive evidence to disprove it. So, does it mean squirrels come out more frequently than heads? but one must consider that a squirrel has a head as well, so I yanked on my hair and sighed, exhausted. Now's not the time for thinking of such rubbish. On the other hand, what is now the right time for? What can I do? What is under my control? If I hadn't bothered trying to find answers during the week there, what would be the point of thinking now? Maybe I should just go back to my ordinary life. The words ordinary life were painful to me. Why did I choose that specific word? I could have just said past, former, or something else. I guess because it was what I was used to. That's the most obvious answer. As they say, what you get used to becomes second nature to you. Instantly, all of last week's events floated before my eyes. Did I really want to stay there so badly? Was just 1 week enough for me to get used to Olga Dmitrovna picking on me all the time, Uliana's pranks and joking around, or Elisa's cheekiness and mockery? I had no answer to this question, but it's obvious that I already miss it, although I'm sure I'll never return there. Obviously, I can't tell whether the force that brought me there might want to entertain itself again, and again, and again. It is possible. But for now, I have what I have, and eventually that I'll remember for the rest of my life. Damn it, how many people get to experience something like that? Even books, even dreams about such things are unthinkable. The main thing is that it was Dr. Moreau's Evil Island. That it wasn't Dr. Moreau's Evil Island, but a normal Soviet pioneer camp with the normal pioneers, and its commoners were overlaid by the astonishing origin of my arrival there. Anyway, it wasn't the worst experience of my life. Perhaps it was one of the best. Obviously, it's sad that everything just ended halfway through, but every story has an end. It's good that it's ended this way. Who knows what else could have happened? Time passed. The events that took place in the camp now seemed more like a fascinating novel I once read. No, I haven't forgotten them. I could recall them in the finest detail. I remember how as a child I used to lie under a blanket with a flashlight and read a fascinating book about spaceflight until dawn. Sometimes I was unable to get up to go to school. My parents always used to scold me for that. But with every night approaching, I would carefully turn every page, trying to absorb every minor detail of the story. I had similar feelings about that pioneer camp. Reality, if I can consider it as such, now seemed more like a book. I didn't think it was bad at all. In the end, the main thing is to remember, and it is not important whether these memories take the form of a slideshow, photos, video, or audio. Now each bus made me feel both fear and hope. At first, I circled around the 410 route with purpose. Several times, I fell asleep on the same seat, but nothing happened, not even a trace of something supernatural. As times went by, I stopped these idle trips. Something changed in my life. It just couldn't do otherwise. A couple of weeks after my return from the camp, I took up my guitar that was lying lonely and gathering dust in a corner. Striking a couple of chords, I remembered Elisa. For me, her image was inseparable from this instrument. At first, it didn't work out very well. Maybe I just had no talent for music. I started reading teach-yourself books and watching video lessons. On the other hand, all the effort wasn't a burden anymore. I just played the chords and polished my skill. And as with any kind of activity, including music, practice makes perfect. About half a year later, I realized that I'd achieved some results. At least I could now smoothly play parts of my favorite songs. Satisfied with my progress, I put a couple of advertisements on music forums, intending to form my own band. I still had no idea what kind of music I wanted to play. My taste varied from something really heavy to anime soundtracks. At first, it seemed impossible for me. I would have to communicate with strangers. And what if we are just too different? And anyway, how to explain to others what music I want to make? But it all worked out much easier. The potential candidates turned out to be not so frightening, and our tastes were mostly the same. After all, we shared the same goals, so issues stemming from lack of understanding could be resolved, and soon we had a band. Suddenly, I discovered my talent as a composer. Having spent entire days and nights on the note editor and sequencers, I started composing okayish things. at least in the opinions of the other band members and pals I had showed my songs to. Quite soon enough, we gave our first concert. A D-list club, not significantly more spacious than my bedroom, three and a half viewers who weren't exactly sober. I was hellishly anxious, and the sound equipment was constantly malfunctioning. But all of that didn't bother me, because I was happy, since this was just the first step to success. However, it was a long time before we were invited again. With great difficulty, we managed to record 3 tracks and publish them on the internet. The reviews were far from ecstatic, but it didn't bother me much. It was just the beginning. Maybe some considered our music just a leisure activity or a brief fixation, but for me it was serious. After all, it was me who founded the band, and all the music was mine as well. I felt a personal responsibility for the fate of my creation. Every spare moment I spent on improving my performance technique, and after a year, I could already confidently say that I wasn't the worst guitarist in the world. Then, some sort of popularity came. We were giving concerts almost every week, and we were finally getting paid. It wasn't important that it was just 500 rubles per man. The fact that our work was in demand and someone was ready to pay for it, even though we were usually a warm-up from other bands, was what mattered. I was sitting before my monitor, torturing a guitar. The date of an upcoming concert was thickly circled on the computer desktop calendar. The very thought of that gave me goosebumps. It will be the first time we will be headliners, and we'll have an album presentation as well. I wonder how many discs will be sold. Of course, the CD era is already over, but there are still some who appreciate it, and maybe some will buy it just to support the band. I looked at the date once more. Yes, it is exactly a year since I returned from Sovionic. My smile reflected in the darkened monitor screen. I wonder whether Elisa would like my music, if she existed in this world. Don't think so. She preferred Soviet rock classics, but who knows? I played a couple of complicated guitar parts and concluded, with a feeling of satisfaction, that the sound of my guitar surpasses by far that of a Soviet Ural guitars, and my skill has overcome that of guitars of the same era. I wonder whether I would have achieved all this without those fantastical events. Unlikely. Nothing strange about that. Lots of people rethink their life after stepping close to the edge. Sure, nothing dangerous happened back then, but a psychological shock is a good substitute for grave danger. I rehearsed my part once more, put the guitar into a case, packed my stuff, and headed to the exit. It was cold outside, just like that day. Slowly, I approached the bus stop for the 410. Such a coincidence. I'm going to the club on this very same bus. With a sinking heart, I counted down the seconds. Soon the bus arrived. It idly opened its doors and swallowed up a few passengers. It was a winter night, just like back then. Cars flashed by outside with their headlights igniting the city as it got ready to sleep. The closer we got to the downtown area, the more people there were in the streets. Some of them were chatting merrily, some were perusing magnificent boutique windows, and some were hurrying somewhere paying no attention to anything. This day, I had no wish to return to that camp. Any other time maybe, but not today. I must play the concert, and the rest can go to hell. I had a clear aim, and nothing else mattered. The club was considerably bigger than the one we played our first concert in, but at that moment it was empty. The sound check was going on. I couldn't hear the drums through the monitor loudspeakers, which I desperately tried to tell the sound guy about. Sound tuned, gadgets installed, set list all prepared, ready to rock. But it is a special day. We are not doing the warm-up. The other guys are doing the warm-up before our concert. Thus, our entrance is last. As I listened to the first band, I noted that they have a lot of improving to do. On the other hand, we were no better not so long ago. As the time got closer to start our performance, my tension grew enormous. Come on. I was literally shaking with anxiety. I decided not to listen to the other band and to wait calmly in the dressing room. Judging by their expressions, my mates were in the same mood. We were silent. Actually, we had nothing to talk about. Our parts were learned and perfected a long time ago. Only nervousness could hinder us. but we already have some experience, so everything will be fine. At least I comforted myself with this thought. And now finally the time has come. I don't remember how we entered the stage and greeted the audience. My consciousness turned on when the first chords of our first song came from the speakers. While sitting in the makeup room, I desperately tried to warm my ice-cold fingers, but now they ran from string to string without the slightest mistake, as if they were charmed. A thought flashed across my mind. Why didn't I still make a single mistake? When I played all these at home during rehearsals, I've never thought about it. Everything seemed a matter of course. But now when I stood in front of the audience, it felt different. Somewhere deep in my mind, there was a thought that soon my finger would slip in. Thank goodness the thinking didn't interfere with my playing. Our performance was nearing the end, and now it was time for the difficult solo I'd been learning for so long. By that point, my nervousness had vanished, and I played through it perfectly, even better than during the rehearsals. Finally, our performance was over, and the concert hall burst with applause. I smiled awkwardly, at least I thought so, and bowed several times with the rest of the band. They shouted, "Encore!" to us. Even without them shouting, I would have been glad to play something else, but we'd run out of songs as we were just a newly formed band. Euphoria prevailed in the dressing room as we congratulated and hugged each other. The sounds of opening champagne bottles echoed in the halls. All our discs had been sold, which made me even happier. Finally, I managed to become something too. It's impossible to predict the future of our band, or of the whole affair with music. But one thing was clear. I finally found something I'm interested in and can dedicate my entire life to. As well as that, I can see that it may be able to make people other than me happy too. I was probably now the happiest man on earth. At least it was surely the best moment of my life. The club is empty, instruments are packed, and to wait I aim to waiting for the others so we can go home. I glanced at the stage where I'd been standing just an hour ago. Once again, joy, pleasure, and excitement gripped me. This won't be the last time I appear on that stage, for sure. And maybe even grander stages like concert halls and Olympic stadiums are in my future. Who knows? Anything is possible now. After saying goodbye to my mates, I ran to the bus stop and luckily caught the 410 bus. Nobody was inside. I took a seat behind the driver, just like back then. Some familiar tune could be heard from the radio. Maybe one day my songs will also be played on the radio. In some way, these trips were similar to the events that took place a year ago. I mean, at the moment, everything is as expected, achieved by means of hard work, and the planned result is fulfilled. But I am returning as another man, a man who has changed in a way. Every story has its beginning and its end. Every story has its own outline, synopsis, contents, key points, a prologue, and an epilogue. And there is no book which, if you read it again, would not reveal new details you didn't notice before. Every story has its beginning and its end. Almost every. Well, there you have it. Apparently, we got Elisa's bad ending. on that note, if that truly is the ending, which I believe it is, I thank you guys for watching. I'm going to call it for now. Yeah. But figure out what we're going to play next, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it. Have a great night.